Bhasha-shastra-praveshini. This is another comparative philology in Garche. It is a work. See, it's a very older study when compared to linguistics. Linguistics analyzes more of the language as such and the structure of the language or the basis of the language. So it analyzes the grammar of the language and sees commonalities between the language or the grammar of the language. So linguistics goes more with the sound, etc. Whereas Bhasha Shastram or comparative philology was the beginnings of linguistics. அதாவது இதுல எப்படின்னா நமக்கு வந்து it is only comparative. It compares the structures and does not make any conclusive no conclusions are made because of this work பார்த்தோம்னா இது அதனால தான் this was an older system which is no longer followed today. Today there is more of linguistic analysis rather than this comparative analysis. என்ன difference சொல்றேன்? Comparison is you have two languages. You are just comparing the words in them. You are comparing the conjugation methods or declension methods, shabdas. Adalla you are just looking at it. You are looking at the similarities between the words that are there. There will naturally be some similarities between many languages of the same branch. But what linguistic does is, the similarity, it does not look at the outer shell. This is just an outer shell comparison. Whereas linguistics goes a little bit further into that. And adanalda inniki vandu the linguistic study is much more scientific than this comparative philology. It's a ஒரு மாதிரி இப்போ when we say, Tamil and Telugu share a lot of words, or Sanskrit and Telugu share a lot of words, that is just a comparative study. So it is the first, you can think of it as the first step into understanding language and how the language is on a global level. This is the first step towards linguistics. So this is a work by Bhasha-shastra-praveshini, has been written in Sanskritam by this Venkatrama Shastri. So we'll start with the introduction here. Upodghataha Shastra Arambha Samarthanam अथ यद्यपि तत्तद्देशकालावच्छेदेन व्यवहाराय भाषाभेदः वरिवर्ति तथा भाषा अनियततया भाषा नियततया व्याकरणादिभेदः तथापि भाषात्वावच्छेदेन अनुगता अधिगन्तव्या विषयाः वर्तन्ते एव. So यद्यपि तत्तद्देश कालादि அவச்சேதேன அந்தந்த காலத்தினுடைய ஒரு அவச்சேதேனங்கறச்சு by separating each bhasha into that particular desham kalam etc व्यवहाराय भाषा भेदः वरिवर्ति. भाषाणां भेदः तु तत्र सर्वदा वर्तते एव सर्वत्र विश्वे. तथा तत्तद् भाषा नियततया इत्युक्ते तत्तद् भाषायां यत्किञ्चित् नियमेन वर्तितव्यम् इति व्याकरणरीत्या एकैकस्यामपि भाषायां विविधाः नियमाः वर्तन्ते इति तत्तद् भाषा नियततया व्याकरणादिभेदः वर्तते. सो भाषाभेदोऽपि वर्तते. भाषायां व्याकरणं यदि वयं पश्यामः परिशीलयामः तत्रापि व्याकरणभेदोऽपि वर्तते. तथापि भाषात्व अवच्छेदेन अनुगताः अधिगन्तव्याः विषयाः वर्तन्ते एव. यदि वयं भाषा इति रूपेण पश्यामः तर्हि या कापि भाषा भवतु तत्र तु कर्ता एकः भवति, कर्म एकः भवति. So when we look at the background and look at it from the understanding of communication, then there are some commonalities that we can find between the languages. Understanding that commonality is Bhasha-shastram. Yad vishayam Bhasha-shastram. Yatha prithivyadyakareena bhinnanamapi bhautikattvadi akarena bhautikadi shastram vartate. For example, prithivyaadi akarena, when we look at Prithvi, etc., the earth or the objects that are found on this earth, there are many bhinnanam bhautikadi akarena bhautika shastram api tatra vartate, because we are trying to look at the background of it and try to understand it. Bhasha shastre asmin avalambita vichara prakaraah bhautikadi shastra tulyam eva vartante. This is very similar to geography, etc. यथा च पार्थिवशास्त्रे पार्थिवांशाः सर्वे अपि सप्रपञ्चं विचार्य निर्णीयन्ते भौतिक पार्थिव अंशाः. If we are trying to look at geology, we have to look at every little aspect that are connected with the Parthiva Shastra, that is analyzing the earth. In the same way, we also have to look at every single element in a bhasha. तथैव भाषाशास्त्रे भाषाणां चरित्रं परस्परं तासां सम्बन्धः साजात्य वैजात्ये साजात्यं which are all similar, vaijatyam which are all dissimilar, ityevamadi vicharyate. We have to analyze all of these. Anantarameva prithyate shabdikavaraihi kimartham vayameva vyavaharamaha iti prativachanam cha asya prashnasya bhasha anaratam evam prithyate shabdikavaraihi. By shabdikavaraihi, those who understand language or those who understand the words, they keep asking this anaratam constantly. They keep asking this question, kimartham vayam evam vyavaharamaha. Why are we communicating in this manner? Kimartham evam vadamaha, kimartham evam na vadamaha. Atra asyam bhashayam tu evam vadamaha, asyam bhashayam tu evam vadat, tarhi kimartham evam bhedaha vartate iti vicharaha tu sarvatha vartate eva sarvada vartate. प्रतिवचनं च अस्य प्रश्नस्य भाषा घटक पद विशेषाणां ध्वनि विशेषाणां तथा पद वाक्यादि निष्पत्ति प्रकार विशेषाणां अर्थ विपरिणतीनां अन्येषां च बाह्यानाम् आन्तराणां च भाषाङ्गानां सम्यक् विचारणायां वर्तते. विचारणायां किं वर्तते? अस्य प्रश्नस्य prativachanam evam vartate. Kutra vartate? So the question, answer for this question, vayam kimartham vayam vyavaharamaha, why are we communicating? The answer to that exists in every little word that forms a bhasha. Bhasha ghataka pada visheshanam, dhvani visheshanam. It lies in the sound as to why we are answering in this manner. It lies in the word, sentence, nishpatti prakara vishesha, how these all come about. Artham viparinati. There are so many meaning differences from one language to another language. Anyesham cha bhahyanam antaranam cha. There are outside that is sociological conditions which affect the communication. There are also inner conditions, that is within the language itself, and within that particular community there can be language differences. Like for example, even sociological, the bhasha that is there in Madras is very different from the bhasha that is there in Thoothukudi. And Madri, there can be differences based bahyam and antaram also. I don't need to go outside of Tamil Nadu. Right? So bhashanganam samyak vicharanayameva asya prashnasya prativachanam vartate. So bhasha shastram cha Indo-Germanic vamshasya tattad bhashatvena prapanchat prag arabhya pratibha vilasana vicharayati. So you look at the Indo-European branch, and we look at Sanskritam in that particular manner. So tattad bhashatvena prapanchat, the Indo-Germanic vamshasya tattad bhashatvena prapanchat prak arabhya pratibha vilasam vicharayati. So this bhasha shastram starts from Indo-Germanic languages and before that. That is, we are trying to go into the Ur language. You are no nund. In manuscript language, when we think of whatever the 100 manuscripts that we have, let's say we have look at Kumarasambhavam, we have some 7 extant. There are Patabhedas that are there. Some 2 manuscripts will follow the same Patabhedam. Some 3 manuscripts will follow another Patabhedam. So which means these 2 must have been from 2 different original texts. These 2 must have come from one Ur text, original text. So on the Madri, there should be an original language from which these Indo-Germanic languages should have come. So we are trying to analyze all that using our Buddhi Vishesham. So we are actually backworking all of these things. Tattad bhasha vayyakarnaihi pravartitaihi anumanaihi Indo-Germanic vamshiyanam bhashanam anugatam sajatyam aikyam cha samarthayati. The grammarians of each of these languages, Indo-Germanic languages, they use their deduction and try to understand the similarities between these languages of this particular branch called Indo-Germanic language. Why have they put in Latin, German, Sanskritam into one branch? Avesta, they have put these under one or Indo-Iranian branch in Purva. Zen, Avesta and Sanskritam belong to the Indo. Sanskrit belongs to the Indo-European also. Why do they combine these two? Because there are grammarians who have understood and who have tried to deduce by inference that these are the similarities, and that is why these are clubbed together. Satyapi bhede bhashanam aikya अधिगमनेन भिन्न भाषाणां भिन्न देशीयानां परस्पर भावनया श्रेयांसि भूयांसि संपद्यन्ते. So even though there is so much of differences, we are trying to get the understanding of each other. परस्पर भावनां तत्र वर्धयितुम् एवं विचारः क्रियते. So वंश घटक संघ विशेषाणां dveshadi api apanodyate. It is easier to remove any kind of enmity or animosity that can exist between two people who follow two different languages. You are trying to go to saying that the roots are the same. Why do we have to fight amongst each other? That sort of a lokahitam is also achieved by such study. Bhasha-shastrasya samya vibhago. So there are different branches of study within the language study. Language study is a broader umbrella. Like when you take zoology, it is a broader umbrella. Studying of aquatic animals, oceanography is one branch. Studying of terrestrial animals becomes one branch. That sort of a branches are being there. So in that manner, Bhasha-shastram cha आंगल्यादि भाषायां बहुधा व्यपदिश्यते तत्र. आंग्ल भाषायां. Okay, in English it is being separated in such manner where it says linguistic science, science of language, comparative grammar, glottology, comparative philology. Iti shodha vyapadeshah, 6 types. Shadvidha. Linguistic iti jatuchit France deshe sancharitum pravrittam jhatityeva nashtam. This was a branch which started off in France, but it immediately fizzled out. It did not develop into a big branch of science. Linguistic science iti, science of language iti cha, ati vistrutatvat tyaktam. That is ati vistrutatvat. Linguistic science and science of language is something that is too vast. So we have not included it in this particular text. Comparative grammar.
Sorry, in the ஆறு சேம் திங்க தான் ஆறா சொல்றால இல்ல originally it was different. அதுக்கப்புறம் eventually how it fizzled out into சொல்லிடுறாங்க.
No. So linguistic is the first type of branch that started out. Linguistic science is another thing. Science of language is another branch. Comparative grammar was also another branch. Glottology is just the sound. And then comparative philology is what we are going to read. Okay. So he is saying about the branches. Namba enda oru section padikkirom. If you are studying, say, Vedanta, how do you understand what is Advaita Vedanta? You will have to start off with darshanas. There are 6 darshanas. Purvamimamsa, Uttaramimamsa iti vartate. Uttaramimamsayam Advaita Vedanta, Vishishta Advaita. Tatra Advaita Vedante Shankaracharyaha. Abdinuttu number we go by branches, right? So you put in a table here. So linguistic was started off and it fizzled out. Linguistic science and science of language is too vast for us to put it in this particular text. Comparative grammar iti punaha bhashamshanam vyakaranasya kevalasya bodhakam iti sankuchitam iti cha na adritam. So when you just compare the grammar, it is very small. Glottology iti yadyapi vivakshitam artham samyak bodhayati सुतरां च भाषा प्रपंचम सप्रपंचम व्याप्नोति तथापि न तत् श्रोत्रपेयम् अतः न महाजन परिगृहीतम् इति विषादास्पदम् एव. See, glottology is adu ennan paathura. I think it is the study of sounds. In a glottis ngardu, it is this and the glottal irukku illaya, So it
தொண்டையில
is
இருக்கிற ஒரு ஆர்கன்.
organ. Yes, it is that linguistics kind of thing only. So yadyapi vivakshitam artham samyak bodhayati, even though it is trying to explain to us whatever we want to know on the science, sutaram bhasha prapancham saprapancham vyapnoti, it also envelops the entire study of language. Still it is very difficult. Na shrotrapeyam, adavadhu it can be boring. That is why it's not been taken by people a lot. Idve old in the comparative philology, language of linguistic science has developed much better today than comparative philology. He is talking about the situation that was there in 1950s. I think that is when this text was written. It doesn't give the date here. Anyway, that's fine. So comparative philology iti tu yadyapi na glottology tulyam alam bhavati artha avabodhane, even though it is not enough like glottology. See, glottology covers much more than comparative philology, even though it is not as encompassing as glottology. Still mahajana parigrihitam iti adriyate taram, people were studying philology like anything all over Europe and India. It was a very big thing at one point. Adinala he has written this text at that time. So Bhasha-shastram cha Chaturdha vibhagam arhati. Now in this comparative philology, so study of languages can be of 6 types, which is what we saw. Now we are looking at comparative philology. Now how is this in under comparative philology? How are we looking at language? We are separating it into 4. First, we look at sound, then words, then the meaning, and how the words are connected. These are the 4 parts of a language. So, phonology, morphology, semantics, and comparative syntax. How is that? So, phonology vibhage tavat bhasha ghataka dhvani visheshanam samutpattihi vriddhihi swabhavaha cheti sthana prayatnadi vicharana purassaram vishayi kriyate. What is phonology? Phonology is that where we understand bhasha ghataka dhvani visheshana. Kaschana dhvanayaha eva vartante prathama stare. In the first level, we understand only sound. So what are all the sounds that make up the language? How is the sound produced? Samutpattihi. Vriddhihi. How is the sound then increased? Swabhavaha. What is the nature of that sound? Increased in how is the production of that sound done and how it is heard in the, or if a production of sound always comes from the throat. Nabhi hritkantam is common for all sounds, but the tongue has to touch in such a manner that na, idella vidyasa irukalya. So that is called vriddhi. And then swabhava is the nature of the sound. Sthana prayatnadi vicharana purassaram. We are looking at the sthanam of the sound. Prayatnam, what is the effort that is needed to produce the sound, etc. Now go to morphology. Morphology vibhage padanishpatti prakaraha. Sup ting adi vicharascha vichara vishayi kriyate. Vicharascha vishayi kriyate. So vichara vishayi kriyate na, it is brought under discussion. What is brought into discussion? The discussion with regards to the word. How is a word formed? What are the parts of a word? That is sup, ting, pratyaya, prakriti, vicharaha kriyate. This is morphology. When you go to semantics, it is artha vicharaha. Vibhagecha padarthanam. Semantics vibhagecha padarthanam tattatkalavachedena parinamaha charitram cha vishayi kriyante. We look at the differences in the meaning and then look at the historical changes that occur in that particular word meaning. Comparative syntax vibhage param shabda bodhartham padanam paraspara anvaya prakaraha vishayi kriyate. We may know the dictionary meaning of certain words. Anvayastu apekshiyate tatra. If we do not know how one word connects with Ramaha chitram pashyati iti chet tatra chitram iti kimartam. How do I know whether it is the picture that is seeing or whether it is Rama who is seeing? Tatra Ramaha iti prathama vibhaktyam vartate iti karanat tatra Ramaha karta, Ramaha pashyati, saha kriyam karoti. This sort of a connection, anvaya prakaraha. is comparative syntax. Kaischit param comparative syntax ityetat morphology vibhage antarbhavyate. That is the meaning of the particular word in the sentence, in the holistic thing, is also included in morphology by certain people. Okay. Atha bhasha vibhaga prakaraha. Okay, classification, genealogical classification or morphological classification. So the classification of languages in general. Now, Bhasha prapanchasya apata pariksha tavat dviprakarakataya vibhajaniyatam pradarshayet. We understand that there can be it can be classified in two ways. Apata pariksha. On a cursory glance, apatataya on a very superficial level, we understand that the world of languages can be separated into two manner. Bhashanam padanishpattau vyakaranece paraspara sadharmya vaidharmya vimarshana prayuktaha ekaha vibhagaha. Prathamastu vibhagaha tatra padanishpattihi kidrishi तत्र व्याकरण विशेषाः कीदृशाः तत्र परस्पर भाषाणां साधर्म्यं किं वैधर्म्यं किम् इति विमर्शनमेव एकः प्रकारः. So when we look at the word grammar and how each language compare with another language with respect to word and grammar, this is one way of classification, the language classification. Upadana vimarshanam prayuktaha vibhagaha dvitiyaha. Upadana garche, I think he means how it is being taken, how it is being used in practice. So the first one is theoretical classification. The second one you can take it as a practical classification. Tathahi ekartha pratipadakānām bhāṣāsu भिन्नतया वर्तमानानां पदानां साजात्यं भवति यदि अस्माकं विमर्शन पदवीं आरोढुम् अर्हति. Now एकार्थ प्रतिपादकानां भाषासु भिन्नतया वर्तमानानां पदानां, there are words in different languages which are, the form is very different but the meaning is the same. When I say something like mother, mata, the form is different but the meaning is the same. Such words we try to bring those words and analyze. So but there is a similarity between those words. Ekartha pratipadakānām kintu bhāṣāsu bhinnataya vartamanānam padanam sajatyam, similarity. Why mother becomes mata is a comparison that we do. Okay, vimarshana padavim arodhum arhati. Bhashastu parasparam samagrataya pradhana amshaihi yatkinchid amshaihi nava padavakya nishpatto vyavaharecha sadrishyam apadyeran. It is possible that they sadrishyam nava என்ன சொல்றார், பரஸ்பரம் பாஷைகளுக்கு வந்து பரஸ்பரம் சமக்ரதையா முழுமையாக in its full way பிரதான அம்சைஹி யத்கிஞ்சித் அம்சைஹி வா சாத்ரிஷ்யம் ஆபத்யரன்னு ந வா அப்படி எடுத்துப்போம். ஆமா, otherwise it's just too confusing. So padavakya nishpatto, when you are trying to create words or sentences and vyavaharam and communication, in these things among languages, in either the mukhya amsha or in some portions, there will definitely be some kind of a similarity or not a similarity. This is what we have observed in general. There could be sadrishyam or there may not be sadrishyam. Evam shabda bodha avaheshu padavakya nishpatti samabhivyahara nidana bhuteshu tasam upadaneshu satsu शब्दादि निष्पत्ति प्रकार निबंधनः विभागः morphological classification इति. उपादानं गर्चे root material. Okay, that is what he means. So that is the root material, the genealogical classification नंगरा. Okay, so shabdabodha avahamna, those words and sentences, pada vakya nishpatti samabhivyahara, communication, In these, the Shabda Bodham becomes the Nidanam or the Karanam for these things, or these are the Karanam for the Shabda Bodha. Shabda Bodham garche understanding of the meaning, Shabda Bodham can happen only when these root things are all compared. But how do we understand a sentence meaning? That is Shabda Bodha. Ramaha Chitram Pashyati. If we want to understand that, oh, there is a person called Rama who is doing an action, and by that action, he attains the Chitra. The action is seeing, and the object of that seeing is so much of meaning we gather from that particular sentence, Ramaha Chitram Pashyati. Now, this is called a Shabda Bodha. This understanding is called Shabda Bodha. How do we get the Shabda Bodha? We get it from Pada, Vakya, Nishpatti, and Samabhivyahara. These are the Nidana Bhutam, these are the Karanam for understanding a sentence. Tasam Upadaneshu Satsu. So, which means understanding of the sentence is present in the Karanam called Padam, Vakyam, etc. Hence, the study of the Pada, Vakya, etc. is called morphological classification. Okay, we classify languages based on analyzing the word Vakyam and its communicative skill. Whereas if we are looking at the root, adadu Upadana Nibandhanaha Vibhagaha is the genealogical classification. What is that Upadanam? Abdina, oh, in this area, people are all speaking one kind of Greek right now. If you look at their texts, their classical Greek is something must have been existed before. So there is a medieval Greek, there is a classical Greek, but this must have come from an original language. Appadina namba we trace back. So looking at the root of the languages, even Tamil, the colloquial Tamil that we are talking about is different from Bharadiyar Tamil. Bharadiyar Tamil is different from Paranjodi Adigal Tamil. That is different from Sangagala Tamil. You know, if you keep reworking and working backwards, you are tracing the root of that particular language. That is called genealogy. And based on that, you are classifying the languages into branches and tree, the language tree. Then it is called genealogical classification. Mute.
What he is trying to say is two types of classification are there. One in the genealogical classification where you are going to the root of the word and trying to do it.
Root of the language as a whole.
As a whole. And the second one
components.
Like, parts of it and how it is being used in the communication.
That is morphological.
Okay. Sorry, two classifications on that. Okay.
Now, what is this genealogical classification? Prakarabhedena sakam prakrityupadanasya samaha yonihi bhashanam ekavamsha utpannatvam suchayati. Now, when we look at the genealogical classification, prakarabhedena sakam, prakara abhedena sakam. Prakarangardu the root of a word. There is no difference in the root of the word between one language and another language. Whereas Prakriti Upadanasya Samaha Yonihi, but Prakritis can be different. There can be other difference, but the Prakara is the same. Samaha Yonihi Suchayati. So Bhashanam Ekavamsha Utpannatvam cha Suchayati. So there seems to be a common root for it. Yoni is the Karanam. No, there seems to be a common karanam for many அதாவது மாறுதல்கள் இருக்கு. You know, there should, then which means we should be able to trace back to one particular root there. So Bhashanam Ekavamsha Utpannatvam, these must have come from one Vamsha. ஒரே மொகஜாடா இருக்குன்னா they are all produced by the same father and motherங்கிற மாதிரி நம்ம சொல்றோம் இல்லையா? So அந்த அச்சடிச்ச மாதிரி இருக்கு ஒரு லாங்குவேஜ்ல. Then you can trace it back to one common language on the top of the tree. So for example, Eka, Dvi, Tri in Sanskrit, when you look at the Latin languages, it is unos, duo, tres. 1, 2, and 3. There seems to be a commonality between the words. Eka, unos. So you mean there is one, abdingro. Duo, the vandudradinga. And then it has been translated to 2. Whereas you come to 3, tra, vardu. So you're looking at those commonalities and then tracing that, okay, these 3 would have come from one language. or they belong to one vamsha. Atra vimarshanam Sanskrit, Latin, English bhashanam charitra sajatyam. There should be a historical similarity. Samana udaratam cha gamayati. There should be a similar time frame also there for somewhere. There is some kind of a samana udaratam. Sorry, not udaratam. Udaratamna ஒரே வயித்துல இருந்து வந்தது. Same stomach. So same source. Evam Angali, German, Dutch, Danish, Anglo-Saxon இங்க சொல்றார். So English comes from Middle Saxon and then Anglo-Saxon இதுதானே அவளோட olden languages பார்த்தோம்னா the English came from Middle Saxon language and then the older Saxon languages. So Anglo-ங்கிறது தான் their genealogy-ல classification-ல வருது. So Angali, German, Dutch, Danish, Bhashanam Vimarshanam Tasam Samana Yogakshematam Ekavamsha Utpannatvam cha Gamayet. When we analyze these languages, Anglo languages, or German or Dutch or Danish, then we understand that it comes from the same Vamsha. तथा च याः भाषाः स्वपदजालानाम् आकारप्रकारेण साकम् एकस्मात् प्रभवात् प्राप्नुवन्ति ताः सर्वा अपि genealogical विभागे अन्तर्भवन्ति. So when after analyzing the words, when we see that they could compare pandro from one language to another language, then we understand they could be in the same tree. बह्व्यः भाषाः यदि एकस्मात् प्रभवात् स्वशब्दादि उपादानं स्वीकुर्वन्ति, then if many languages have taken its like in the modern languages in India, many have taken in the northern languages, Hindi, Bengali, everything, many root words have come from Sanskritam. If you look at Hindi, Punjabi or some other Pashto, idella pathomna, it comes from Persian, Urdu. Adilirந்து, there are many which have taken from there. So that belongs to Hindi is one sandwich language between Indo-European and Indo-Iranian languages. It comes from the Persian root also. It has. So when you Bhahvyaha bhashaha yadi ekasmat prabhavat swashabdadi upadanam svikurvanti, if they take their roots from one particular language, yadi cha tasu bhuishtataya pratipadika shabdaha vishishya. In particular, when the Pratipadika words have a lot of commonality between the root language and the present languages, Samanya Vastu Prani Kriya Bandhavyadi Dyotakaha, then it in these Shabdas talk about there must be common Vastu between those two people, those two set of people. Prani, there could be and the dogs or what are all the livestock that they were dealing with. Kriya, the actions that they were doing. Bandhavyam, relative mata, pita, bhrata, bhratribhya, these kind of words. These are all, these tell us about the sociological conditions that the people who were talking these languages were living in. Sankhya, sarvanamadhyotakaha. Cha, Tulyavat daridrishyante. If they have taken from the same source, then you can, if you compare Hindi, Bengali, Gujarati, you will find that there is a commonality between them with respect to Sankhya, Sarvanama, Prani, Kriya, Bandhavya, Pratipadika. All of these will be from Sanskritam or some other common language, or Prakritam. Tarhi tasarvaha ekavamsha utpannaha samana yogakshemaha. Yogakshemaha na what they have got and what they have preserved in their language. That is yogakshemam. So they have come from one vamsha. Tasu parasparam bandhavyam nischetum paryate eva. It is easy to look at the relationship between these two languages easily. French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, Italian, tadvikritayah cha yadi parasparam bhavyante tarhi vimarshaka drishtehe etat pratibhayat. When you compare these all languages like French, Spanish, etc., Portuguese, etc., then this is the thing that comes into the mind of the analyzer. What comes? Yat taha sarvaha api anya desha kalavachedena Latin bhashayaha vikritayaha eva. Because they are confined to that particular country. The dialectal differences have come, but Latin was the original language. Abdina, we can trace it back to Latin. तथा च ताः सर्वाः अपि परस्परं सोदर्यः, they are sister languages. प्राचीन लैटिन भाषायाः पुत्र्यः इति अपि कथने न किञ्चित् उष्यते दुष्यति. It's not wrong to say that they are all children of daughters of Latin. इदं तु अत्र अवधेयं यद्यपि एकस्याः भाषायाः एकवंश उत्पन्नत्वं निसर्गतः, even though it is natural to say that from one bhasha all of the particular vamsha bhashaah have come from that particular language, tathapi paribhramati kale, adda Hindi example somme, as the time goes by, nava uditan abhiprayan avishkartum, in order to try to speak our new ideas that have come about. Like for example, for computer, you want to try to use certain newer words. Inniki modern Sanskritam or spoken Sanskritam is like that, because we want to try to say newer items. Then what do? Vijatiya bhashabhyah padasvikaraha syat. We could take from other languages also. Yena tat samana yogakshematvam adhyavasiyeta sthulamatibihi. Those who have that intelligence will know that, okay, this word has been traced back to another language which has no connection to this, but they probably brought in that object from that particular country and they wanted to express it in that manner. Abdin irukla. So it shows that there must have been an interaction between these two countries. Historically, it plays a big role. Vimarshakastu सूक्ष्मेक्षणिकया तत्तद्भाषीय शिक्षा धर्मादिभिः भाषायाः याथातथ्यम् अधिगच्छति. So an analyzer with a very subtle drishti, with a kannottam சொல்றோம் இல்லையா, அந்த மாதிரி பார்த்து he understands how to analyze the language and take it into how it is probably affecting the history, or history has affected this word. அப்படிங்கிறது he goes to the tattvam of it. Yadhatatyam, the true nature. He understands the true nature of a bhasha only when he looks at it with a sukshma drishti. Illana he cannot understand. Atra dingmatram udahriyate. So he goes on to give about the contamination of the languages, how it came from other languages. Seriya? Stop with this.